Today, we begin by building a clear foundation of what is happening to our climate, why it's happening, and why it matters beyond just the environment. So, we are talking about climate change, but to understand climate change, first we have to understand what exactly greenhouse gases are. So, greenhouse gases are gases in our atmosphere coming from natural and various anthropogenic sources. And what they do is they trap heat mainly. So, gases like carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, water vapor, they stay in our atmosphere, holding the infrared radiation from the sun, much like the glass panels of a greenhouse keeps the plants warm, for example. So, it has the same effect on our planet. So, without these gases, our planet would be too cold to sustain life. So, life wouldn't survive. It basically acts as a temperature moderator for life to survive. However, with the rapid growth of global population, our demand for energy, transportation, housing, food, everything is increasing. And to meet these demands, industrial production is expanding, and this is leading to more and more emissions, leading to more deforestation, and is actually putting a greater strain on natural resources. So, when we burn fossil fuel like coal, oil, natural gas, right, you know that we need all this for energy production, for transportation, and industrial production. Um, as we burn this fossil fuel, we are releasing massive amounts of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. And this creates an enhanced greenhouse effect. That means that it's trapping more and more heat than the natural process can balance, resulting in what we call global warming. So, global warming refers to the long-term increase in Earth's average temperature, specifically due to the rising levels of greenhouse gases. And this global warming is actually creating a shift in our weather pattern, a long-term shift, and also a shift in the time, in the period, the frequency in which natural events occur. And this is what we are referring to as climate change. This rising temperature disrupts long established weather and climate systems. So, we can see that the glaciers are melting due to the rising temperature. As the glaciers are melting, the sea levels are rising, the oceans are warming, and all of these are, for example, threatening coastal cities and communities or island nations who are exposed to these impacts firsthand. So, as weather becomes more extreme and unpredictable, specifically, we can see extreme forms of flood happening, droughts happening, devastating hurricanes happening. All of these are having an impact on the communities who are faced with it. So, almost all current anthropogenic activities, fossil fuel consumption, deforestation, industrialization, all are contributing increasingly to greenhouse gas emissions and hence creating a long-term shift in the climate of our planet. Yes, Earth's climate has changed naturally over the past millions of years, but today the changes that we see are much more faster, is much more intense, and this is driven overwhelmingly by human activities, especially since the Industrial Revolution. That's why we use the term anthropogenic climate change, meaning that this climate change is caused by human actions. And oftentimes, people think climate change as mainly an environmental problem or environmental concern. It can be about melting glaciers, as I said, endangered species, rising sea levels. However, we have to understand that the impacts are not only limited to the environment, to the natural environment, but it goes much deeper into social and economic systems. So, for example, changes in rainfall patterns threatens agriculture and food security. So, climate change has a huge contribution towards food insecurity. Heat waves, waterborne diseases, respiratory illnesses, all are on the rise due to the changing climate. Farmers, fishers, and workers who are dependent on natural systems, they're already losing their income because of the loss of natural productivity. So, this also shows that um, climate change is influencing people's livelihoods, their lives, their incomes. So it's not only limited to what we think of the biophysical, environmental factors, but it goes much deeper into the social and economic system. So at the end, sadly, the poorest and the most marginalized communities who have most likely contributed the least to climate change in terms of emissions are suffering its worst effects. Some of these communities are affected disproportionately, and it is currently a profound development crisis that affects every aspect of human security. Traditionally, we have used global north frameworks, which usually focuses on mitigation. That means how can we reduce our emissions to slow down the future impacts. But many countries in the global south, where communities are already vulnerable due to lack of economic and social resources, financial resources, they are experiencing the impacts right now. And they need immediate short-term actions to deal with climate change, and not think of how to reduce emissions all the time, because if you think of the global southern countries, they're in the front lines of the climate change impacts that they are facing. Tackling climate change requires addressing the deeper layers of impacts, because a truly sustainable future must protect both people and the environment. So, as we move forward, we will explore how climate action can be more inclusive, localized, and empowering, especially for vulnerable communities in the global south.